what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we look at 7 maybe questionable alternatives to Stagg Jr or just Stagg Bourbon. Run the video. Alright then folks, thank you for joining us for another new and exciting episode on today's edition of the Whiskey Cove. And that is 7 probably questionable alternatives to Stagg Jr or just Stagg these days now. If you're not a subscriber, definitely hit that subscribe button, like, and comment down below what would be your suggestion, because for me personally, if I'm trying to make the best alternative I can for Stagg Jr, I'm probably sticking in the Buffalo Trace umbrella, but everything in the Buffalo Trace umbrella is just super allocated. So you need to step outside of that, and we have maybe 1 or 2 allocated bottles on this list, but some also findable ones there as well that can maybe get as close to Stagg Jr as we can. With that being said, let's take a couple of minutes to hear from today's sponsor, and that is going to be ZBiotics. ZBiotics is a 5-month, 6-month sponsor of the Whiskey Cove, and without them, a lot of the reviews that we do on this channel wouldn't happen at all. So ZBiotics is the world's first genetically engineered pre-alcohol probiotic drink. And let's face it, we don't wake up the next day feeling completely refreshed like we used to anymore. With ZBiotics, that can change. So how does ZBiotics work? Let me hit you with some knowledge. It was invented by PhD scientists to help you feel better the morning after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink it, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, to drink responsible, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. So since working with ZBiotics and doing the Whiskey Cove, I've tried this quite a bunch, and for me, it has a solid impact. I can drink this, making it my first drink of the day. I can go about doing my reviews here on the Whiskey Cove, and then I can wake up the next day, I can go to the gym, and I get back into the saddle, and I'm doing everything that I need to be doing that day. And let's face it, we have a lot of things coming up here, probably reunions, weddings, graduations, and what better time to do it than now. And the best part of ZBiotics is it's a no hassle, money back guarantee. If you're not happy for whatever reason, you can return it for a full refund. So if you want to get some ZBiotics, I've got a discount link for you. Go visit to zbiotics.com/whiskeycove. That's zbiotics.com/whiskeycove. Link is on the screen, or you can scan that QR code. The link will also be down below in the video description there too. When you are at checkout, use my code WhiskeyCove to get 15% off your order. And you can also sign up for their subscription service and use my code WhiskeyCove, and that will work there too as well. Thank you to ZBiotics for their continuing partnership, and as always, support the Whiskey Cove by supporting our partnerships and our sponsorships there as well. Thank you to ZBiotics to partnering with us once again. With that being said, let's get into today's video. So we appreciate you being patient with us as we do our promotions here on the Whiskey Cove. We limit them to 1, maybe 2 a month. So we really appreciate you folks at home there. So Stagg Jr, let's remember what this nose is like. Very cinnamon forward. You get a little bit of a proof punch there as well, but you get those Buffalo Trace vanillas there, like that waffle vanilla ice cream with some thousands of sprinkles on top and some nuts. Real taste bomb, but as always, not really much of a findable bottle of whiskey, albeit if those who are watching the video of the sponsorship right now would see I do have a couple of Stagg Jnrs myself. So these are going to be 7 alternatives to Stagg Jr. Some questionable because you just can't get the only other alternative to Stagg Jr that I can think of off the top of my head is like a George T. Stagg, because that's the similest you're going to get. However, we have some pretty good findable ones here, and we have one from Buffalo Trace that is pretty close. So let's keep this off to the side here so we can still see it. So bottle number 1, and that is going to be 4 Roses. So this is going to be the barrel strength one, and this is probably and is the most, I would say, allocated bottle on this list. However, we see these rolling through Colorado a couple of times a year, and they have a couple of different mash bills or yeast strains is kind of how they separate it. And I would say that the one specifically that you want to keep a lookout for is this one, is the OESK one. has a little bit more spicy notes with it, and it has a lot more of that sweetness as well that is similar to Stagg Jr. They have some other ones as well that might be more stone fruit forward, delicate and that sort of stuff, but the OESK, and even the description here says spicy, full body, bold, which is what Stagg Jr is, but also has the sweetness there as well. So definitely look out for the OESKs. Look for the ones in the region for about 9 to 11 years. This one is 9 years, 11 months, so pretty perfect and on point there. And then also if you can find the ones that are 60% ABV and above, because Stagg Jr is generally said at around 63 to like 66% ABV. This one is 63% ABV, so still a little bit short, but Stagg Juniors generally sit quite high up in ABV, and it's really hard to find a findable whiskey that is available in every state that are close to that ABV and similar in somewhat taste. So the Four Roses Barrel Select OESK 60% ABV and above ones up. Really good alternatives to Stagg Jr. This is going to cost you probably $80 to $90 if you can find it. Some liquor stores are going to mark it up even higher than that. I apologize for that. However, if you're able to find them for $80 to $90, definitely pick them up because you're on for a winner. Bottle number one. Bottle number two, we went with, so this is Copper Sky's light whiskey. So I'm not talking about Copper Sky in general. So Copper Sky is a distillery out of Longmont in Colorado, fairly local to me. However, they source mostly all of this stuff, or a lot of this stuff, I should say, from MGP. So MGP are known to do light whiskey, which is their 95% corn, and I believe it's 5% malted barley. However, it's usually aged at like at least 13 years. This guy is coming in actually at 16 years old, and the ABV on this is hazmat because it is 70.2% ABV or 140.4 proof. So it hits Stagg Jr and then goes above that. So what you want to do, you don't want to look necessarily for this bottle. If you can find this bottle, great, the light whiskey from Copper Sky. However, you will see whiskey sitting on shelves from time to time from different brands called light whiskey, and if you find that at cask strength, it's almost always guaranteed that it comes from MGP, and it's the MGP light whiskey at cask strength, aged for at least 13 years, is the distillate you want to find, because it has the sweetness to it as well, and it has some of that cinnamon spice that this has as well, maybe some of that berry note there as well, but it's very drinkable for the hazmat proof or the hazmat range there as well. So look out for light whiskey. What other distilleries do the light whiskey? I believe like Obtainium, I believe, is a brand that does it as well. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure some people will help us out down in the comments below, but I know a bunch of people do the light whiskey. So keep an eye out for the light whiskey and the higher ABV stuff as well. But this stuff is really good. This was a single barrel pick between Copper Sky and then Spirit Wine and Provisions down in Alvaro, Casey Adler. Really good pick this was. So that was Copper Sky, but specifically MGP's light whiskey. Next up, and we are going from Indiana, and we are going to Tennessee, not Kentucky. And that's because we're going to Jack Daniels. We're going to the Brown-Forman owned distillery of Jack Daniels. So this is, not gonna lie, this is where we draw the line of what is a questionable alternative to Stagg, because it doesn't taste like Stagg, doesn't smell like Stagg. However, ABV is pretty close to Stagg. This is coming in at 64.9%, so right where Stagg generally sits at. Findability on this is incredibly much easier than Stagg Jr. However, some of you folks are starting to tell me that this can sometimes be a difficult bottle to find now. So if you're someone who's been sleeping on this, then you might want to sleep on it too longer, because you know, it sounds like this is might be not as easy to find here in the not so distant future. It is that Brown-Forman palette of cherries and berries and bananas and nuts. It's sweeter than Stagg. It has some of the bacon spices there as well, but it's a little bit more yeast forward, butter popcorn forward. It is an alternative in the sense that if you want a cask strength, findable, higher ABV whiskey, this is a good alternative. If you want something that tastes more like Stagg, the two bottles before probably taste similar, and then some other ones as well. However, this is a good alternative in its own right. That was bottle number 3. Moving on, and let's dance on back to Kentucky, and of course we had to have Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. So you'll see many videos probably on the Whiskey Tube on YouTube about alternatives to Stagg, and I think Elijah Craig always has a place on most people's lists because it's almost like a natural alternative in a way. You have Buffalo Trace, you have Heaven Hill, you have Buffalo Trace Bourbon, you have Elijah Craig Bourbon, you have Stagg Jr, you have Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, so on, so forth. The batches of this are somewhat aligned. Some of these drop down into the 50s. This one is the B520, 63.6% ABV. They generally sit higher ABV, but sometimes they'll drop into the high 50s. The age used to be always 12 years, but they've started playing around with that a little bit. So the age generally sits closer to Stagg Jr for the most part. Noses, this B520 nose is very similar to the Stagg. I love this B520. It does have maybe a touch of peanut there that the Stagg doesn't have, but you have the bacon spices, you have like the apple pie crust there as well. You have the spice that comes from the proof, the ABV, the heat as well. You have the findability. You can find these mostly in a lot of places. They also come out with a single barrel picks that you should be able to find there too as well. ABV, like I said, on point. Price, you're probably looking around $80, maybe more so now. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you enough about these, the Elijah Craig, because they've been around long enough. They're a cornerstone of bourbon, and they've always been known to be a great alternative to Stagg. So that is the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof series. Moving on to probably another one much like the Jack Daniels that doesn't nose and taste like Stagg, but is a good alternative for reasons that I'll hopefully explain. And the other other allocated bottle on this list, and there's the Old Forester Barrel Strength series. ABV on this is always very close to Stagg, like this is 63% ABV. They only ever have these in picks. If you can't find the picks, maybe the 1920, which is 115 proof, might be a good option, but I think the proof is where you draw the line on the similarity to this and make it an alternative, if you ask me. The flavor profile leans more to the Jack Daniels. You get that caramel, popcorn, yeasty notes that you get from a lot of Brown-Formans. However, like the ABV is on point. It's just as hard to find. Price point is probably going to set you back $80 to $90, like the Four Roses. This and the Four Roses are probably the two hardest ones to find on this list, but just giving you some options. If we're going to give 8 recommendations, we're going to have a couple which are going to be questionable, but I do think this is an excellent bottle in its own right. And as someone who loves Stagg and loves Brown-Forman and loves Old Forester, if I can't find Stagg and I can find this, then I'm a very happy man indeed. Old Forester Barrel Strength single barrels. So 2 left, and the next one is actually from the Buffalo Trace umbrella, and that is going to be Benchmark Fallproof. This one has almost been described by some people as the baby junior of Stagg Jr, if you like. Has a lot of those similar notes that Stagg Jr has, the kind of sweet burnt brown sugar, kind of pastry bacon spices and some berry notes. Where this differs is the quality, if you ask me. Some of the notes are the same, but it does burn a little bit more. You feel it going down a little bit. With the Stagg Jr, you kind of have to pinch yourself a little bit or remind yourself of how high the ABV is, because it's so drinkable. But with this guy, it lets you know, that's for sure. It has a bite. It kicks like a Japanese mule. You know that it's coming in at 125 proof or 62.5% ABV. These are mostly findable Kentucky, Indiana, Missouri, around those states. You might be able to find them in other states as well, but the distribution network of these haven't been as good as we had hoped that they were originally, but the price is pretty unbeatable on these. It's like $20, $25, which is quite spectacular if you want to peep through the Stagg Jr window, if you like. It's a little bit of a gateway to Stagg Jr and gives you some of the taste and experience, but maybe throw an ice cube in there as well so you don't get heartburn for the next week. That is going to be Benchmark Fallproof. And then lastly, and certainly not leastly, that is going to be Blue Note Jute Joint Whiskey, uncut and unfiltered. Blue Note is a distillery out of Tennessee. However, this is not a Tennessee whiskey. This is sourced from a distillery in Kentucky that no one knows where it comes from. Heck, this could be Stagg Jnr juice. It's not going to be, because no one ever sources from Stagg, or sources from Buffalo Trace, I should say, unless they're owned by Sazerac. ABV on this is going to be 62.2% ABV, or 124.4 proof. Like I said, this is the Blue Note Jute Joint, uncut and unfiltered. A great whiskey in its own right. It's quite spicy. Reminds me more of something that might be similarly resemble like Wild Turkey or Jim Beam, but that proof elevates the sweeter notes in there. You get some of that barrel char that spills over the side as you're circling the spoon of whiskey in the glass, if you like, and those sweeter notes definitely climb up and climb over. That kind of consume some of those other spicier notes that were there, and balances it out a little bit. You get some rye spice there and some bacon spices like you do with the Stagg. Not as fruit forward here. I would say that this is more bold, quintessential bourbon notes. You get the oak, you get the vanilla, you get the barrel char, and it's just amped up and on steroids. So it has some similarities to Stagg, but what I like about this, it's pretty findable. You're going to be paying around $40 to $45 there as well. So excellent value for money. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video here. 8 alternatives to Stagg, however way you want to slice it. They're alternatives, some questionable, and I think some are pretty good, and some natural successes to, or some natural comparisons to what Stagg Jr can be. So if you like what we do, and definitely support the channel by subscribing. Go over to ZBiotics and check them out too as well. And thank you to them for partnering with us on today's video. As we drink through the world's whiskies one glass at a time, cheers.